lange Nacht der Forschung 2026. Herzlich willkommen hier im Naturhistorischen Museum. Das ist heuer der Standort aller 3 Bundesministerien, die dieses größte Event für Wissenschaft, Forschung und Innovation veranstalten. Es sind nämlich das Bundesministerium für Frauen, Wissenschaft und Forschung, das Bundesministerium für Innovation, Mobilität und Infrastruktur sowie das Bundesministerium für Wirtschaft, Energie und Tourismus. Herzliche Grüße auch an alle, die im Livestream mit dabei sind. Mein Name ist Bernhard Weingartner, Physiker mit Fokus auf Wissenschaftskommunikation. Bin natürlich wieder mit Begeisterung bei der Lange Nacht der Forschung dabei. Hier am Standort gibt es ein riesengroßes Programm. Es gibt zahlreiche interaktive Stationen. Dementsprechend viel los ist auch heute schon den ganzen Nachmittag. Ich durfte hier im Saal starten um 17:30 Uhr mit der ersten Science Show für Kinder. Es war gerammelt voll. Am Boden sind sie schon überall gesessen. Das ist natürlich dann besonders erfreulich. Und jetzt startet dann gleich die Begrüßung der Vertreterinnen der 3 Ministerien und des Museums. Es geht dann nahtlos weiter mit dem Heinz-Oberhummer Award, organisiert durch die Science Busters. Und dann um 21 Uhr folgt noch, da freue ich mich drauf, dass ich den Science Slam wieder moderieren darf, wo junge Forscherinnen und Forscher ihre aktuellen Projekte sehr kompakt, sehr kreativ auf die Bühne bringen. Jetzt darf ich aber mit einem gemeinsamen Applaus, ich mache da schon Platz, auf die Bühne bitten, Frau Bundesministerin Eva-Maria Holzleiter, Frau Staatssekretärin Elisabeth Zietner, Frau Sektionsleiterin Henriette Spierer und Frau Generaldirektorin Katrin Wohland. Bitte mit einem großen Applaus in das Zentrum der Bühne. Bitte. Ein Mikrofon liegt bereit. Frau Bundesministerin, ich darf mit Ihnen starten. Warum unterstützt das Bundesministerium für Frauen, Wissenschaft und Forschung die Lange Nacht der Forschung? Und was braucht es aus Ihrer Sicht, um Menschen wirklich für Wissenschaft zu begeistern?
Die Lange Nacht der Forschung ist ein Abend, wo man ganz viel mit Neugier unterschiedliche Dinge entdecken kann. Von Forschungseinrichtungen, Universitäten, Hochschulen, auch hier im Naturhistorischen Museum kann man sich Dinge anschauen und man kann Fragen stellen, die eigentlich den eigenen Alltag betreffen. Wie schaut es aus mit Mobilität? Draußen war zum Beispiel eine Station, da ist darum gegangen, wie weit man fahren kann mit 0,1 Gramm CO2. Und dann erfährt man, wie weit geht es mit dem Rad, wie weit mit dem Zug, unterschiedlichste Dinge. Also man kann Fragen des Alltags stellen, bekommt Antworten, man kommt mit Forscherinnen und Forschern in Kontakt und im besten Falle, insbesondere wenn es junge Menschen sind, trifft man heute schon die Forscherinnen und Forscher von morgen. Und deswegen unterstützen wir als Bundesministerium für Frauen, Wissenschaft und Forschung auch die Lange Nacht der Forschung, weil es ist wirklich so eine großartige Schau von unterschiedlichsten Dingen, 300 Standorte in ganz Österreich, wo man einfach Neues entdecken kann, lernen kann und vor allem auch in den Dialog treten kann. Also wirklich Forschung auf Augenhöhe und das ist, denke ich, auch sehr wichtig.
Absolut. Vielen Dank. Das Mikrofon bitte gleich weitergeben, Frau Staatssekretärin. Warum sind Sie und Ihr Bundesministerium für Wirtschaft, Energie und Tourismus bei der Langen Nacht heuer dabei?
Ja, einen wunderschönen guten Abend auch von meiner Seite. Auch ein herzliches Willkommen an die ganz jungen Gäste. Eines ist klar, ohne Forschung gibt es keinen Fortschritt. Und all das, was wir im täglichen Tun erleben, hat irgendwo seinen Ausgang in Ergebnissen in der Grundlagenforschung und dann in der angewandten Forschung genommen. Und genau das kann man hier einfach großartig erleben. Und wir wollen einfach zeigen, dass Forschung auch ein ganz wichtiger Teil von unserem Wohlstand ist, den wir so in Österreich nicht hätten. Und jeder zweite Euro kommt eigentlich auch nicht nur von den Universitäten, sondern auch aus der außeruniversitären Forschung. Auch da gibt es heute viele Beispiele draußen von Startups, die zum Beispiel zeigen, wie man älteren Menschen helfen kann, aber auch wie man zum Beispiel ganz junge Kinder zu mehr Kreativität bringen kann. Und all das ist ein Grund, in der Langen Nacht der Forschung zu zeigen, was Forschung für dieses Land kann. Und die Forschung wird die Zukunft sein, auch in den nächsten Jahren.
Vielen Dank. Frau Sektionsleiterin, warum unterstützt das Bundesministerium für Innovation, Mobilität und Infrastruktur diese Lange Nacht der Forschung?
Ja, jetzt was anderes zu sagen, ist irgendwie ziemlich schwierig, ne? Aber ich versuche mal was ganz Einfaches. Wer von Ihnen zahlt Steuern? Ja. Und hoffentlich mehr, weil Mehrwertsteuer, wenn du dir einen Bonbon kaufst, zahlst du auch Steuern, weil da ein kleines Mädchen sitzt. Und zum Glück fließt in Österreich auch ein Teil dieser Steuern in Forschung, Technologie, Innovation, in unsere Universitäten, in Forschungseinrichtungen, aber auch in Unternehmen und Startups, die neue Produkte entwickeln. Und irgendwie finde ich, wir sollten auch mal ein bisschen zeigen, was denn eigentlich mit diesem Steuergeld, was Sie alle zahlen, passiert. Und ein bisschen was davon sehen Sie. Wir sind übrigens auch, darauf möchte ich hinweisen, weil wir doch uns bemühen, immer wieder Dinge zu tun, wo man auch sehen kann, was wir machen. Wir sind auch Weltraumministerium. Und ich sehe in der 5. Reihe unsere 3 Weltraumbotschafterinnen aus Transpace. Ihr seid sogar mal schwerelos geflogen, sitzen zum Beispiel. Draußen steht auch das KI-Mobil, auch etwas, was wir unterstützen, wo ein Auto tatsächlich in die Betriebe in Österreich zu den Arbeitnehmerinnen und Arbeitnehmern fährt und zeigt, was passiert eigentlich, wenn künstliche Intelligenz in den Arbeitsalltag kommt. All diese Sachen zum Anfassen und Anpacken, für mich persönlich auch zum Spielen ein bisschen. Deswegen habe ich gesagt, ich gehe dann gleich wieder raus spielen. Freue ich mich, heute Abend hier erleben zu dürfen und natürlich auch grüßen zu dürfen an der Stelle von Peter Hanke, dem eigentlich zuständigen Bundesminister für dieses Thema.
Vielen Dank für die Grüße vom Weltraumministerium zum Naturhistorischen Museum. Frau Wohland, was sollen denn die Besucherinnen und Besucher im Idealfall heute mit nach Hause nehmen?
Ich glaube, sie nehmen schon mit, wofür Steuergelder sinnvoll investiert sind, weil wir brauchen tatsächlich Ressourcen, um auf unsere umfangreichen Sammlungen aufzupassen, sie zu konservieren, sie zu erschließen, sie für die Öffentlichkeit zugänglich machen, sie zu erforschen. Und heute ist es tatsächlich möglich, was sonst nämlich nicht einfach möglich ist, sich die tatsächlich anzugucken bei Führungen hinter die Kulissen. Und wir zeigen aber auch, was man mit den Sammlungen an Forschung tun kann. Das sollen die Menschen auch mitnehmen, diese Begeisterung für Forschung, für die Sammlung und auch für dieses Verständnis, was man alles braucht, um Wissenschaft zu betreiben. Also man braucht ja Methoden, man braucht Wissen, man braucht Zugang zur Literatur, zu den Sammlungen. Also ich hoffe, dass Inspiration mitgenommen wird.
Wie Wissen entsteht, das ist genau der wichtige Punkt, der soll heute vermittelt werden. Frau Ministerin, warum ist es denn besonders wichtig, bei den Kindern und Jugendlichen schon das Interesse, die Begeisterung für Wissenschaft zu entfachen?
Weil letzten Endes Kinder und Jugendliche eigentlich meistens die richtigen Fragen stellen. Wie funktioniert das? Was ist es? Was passiert da eigentlich? Und gerade diese Fragen sind die Forscherinnen und Forscher jeden Tag umtreiben und wodurch man auch neue Thesen aufstellen kann oder neue Thesen aufstellt, die man hinterfragt, die man überprüft, die man verifiziert oder falsifiziert. Also von dem her ist eigentlich der Grundgedanke, mit dem Kinder ihre Welt erschließen, genau der, auf dem Forschung begründet. Und diese Neugier, diese Entdeckungskraft, dieser Entdeckungswille, der soll nicht nur hier bei der Langen Nacht der Forschung auch weitergeführt werden, sondern letzten Endes natürlich über diese Nacht hinaus. Im besten Falle wirklich ein Leben lang neugierig zu sein, zu hinterfragen, Dinge auch kritisch zu analysieren. Ich denke, das ist ganz, ganz wichtig und vor allem hat deswegen auch die Forschung und die Wissenschaft haben eine ganz große Aufgabe, nämlich dass eben gerade auch dieser Dialog auf Augenhöhe passiert. Nicht von oben herab belehrend, sondern wirklich auch inklusiv und gemeinschaftlich. Und da möchte ich nur eine Lanze brechen, auch für Citizen Science, also dass wirklich auch eigentlich alle Teil sein können von Forschung. Und es nicht etwas ist, was nur irgendwo im Elfenbeinturm passiert, sondern was unseren Alltag bestimmt, was unseren Alltag prägt und wo man eben auch nicht nur Teil sein kann, sondern auf jeden Fall auch Teil sein soll und sein muss. Also von dem her, das ist, glaube ich, etwas ganz Wichtiges, auf Augenhöhe miteinander einfach Dinge zu entdecken und zu erschließen. Dafür steht die Lange Nacht der Forschung und das ist etwas, was viele Kinder in sich tragen und auf jeden Fall dieses in sich tragen muss weitergeführt werden.
Der Dialog auf Augenhöhe, der eine nachhaltige Wirkung über die Nacht hinaus, mir gefällt diese Formulierung besonders gut, über die Nacht hinaus bewirkt. Frau Staatssekretärin, Sie sind ja auch für Startups zuständig. Was haben denn Startups eigentlich mit Forschung zu tun?
Ja, also grundsätzlich muss man sagen, dass ganz viele Ideen, die die Startups dann zu Unternehmen machen, ihren Ursprung in einer technologischen Entwicklung haben. oder in einem anderen Forschungsergebnis. Also es ist egal, wenn wir daran denken, welche neuen Möglichkeiten es in der Medizin gibt, welche neuen Möglichkeiten es in der Mobilität gibt oder welche Lösungen gefunden werden, um das große Thema des Klimawandels anzugehen. Ganz viel davon entsteht aus einem Forschungsergebnis an einer Uni. Wir haben diese Woche auch in dieser Konstellation zu dritt den Startup Monitor präsentiert und da war klar, 71% unserer Startups kommen aus den sogenannten Schlüsseltechnologien. Das fängt an bei künstlicher Intelligenz, geht bis hin zur Robotik, aber natürlich auch Life Science, überall dort, wo es darum geht, wie kann man auch im Bereich der Medizin Dinge verbessern. Und genau deshalb ist es so wichtig, dass wir nicht nur kluge Forscherinnen haben und vor allem viel Forschungsnachwuchs, weil darum geht es ja auch, dass junge Leute sagen, das könnte schon was für mich sein, gerade auch die Mädchen, das ist, glaube ich, auch ganz wichtig, sondern dass wir dann aus diesen Ideen, die an Universitäten oder anderen außeruniversitären Forschungszentren entstehen, auch tatsächlich Unternehmen gründen. Warum? Weil dann entsteht auch mehr Wohlstand. Die zahlen nämlich dann wieder den Steuern, um auch wieder neue Forschungsförderung möglich zu machen und erhalten letztendlich dieses wunderschöne Österreich, auch die kulturellen, wunderbaren Gebäude, wie wir sie hier in diesem Naturhistorischen Museum erleben. Und in diesem Sinne wünsche ich mir, dass ganz viele eine Laufbahn einschlagen, wo sie mit der Forschung eng verbunden sind und aus der Forschung Zukunftschancen für Österreich machen.
Mut zum Unternehmertum. Vielen Dank. Frau Sektionsleiterin, ein wichtiges Stichwort heute Abend ist ja auch die Innovation. Welche Schwerpunkte setzt denn Ihr Ministerium im Bereich Innovation und Technologie?
Darf ich was anderes antworten? Weil ich fand das jetzt gerade nochmal so eine schöne... eigentlich nicht, ne? Aber ich übe jetzt, nachdem das schon der zweite Auftritt gemeinsam diese Woche ist. Ich lerne ganz viel von Ihnen, Frau Ministerin. Nein, aber es sind so wahnsinnig viele Themen schon gefallen, auf die wir setzen. Und ich würde vielleicht ganz gerne noch daran anschließen, was die Frau Staatssekretärin gerade gesagt hat, dass es so wichtig ist, Jugendliche, Kinder, junge Menschen zu begeistern und wollte einfach darauf hinweisen, dass wir da doch auch einige Angebote haben und würde wirklich sehr gerne dazu motivieren, entweder Eltern ihre Kinder darauf hinzuweisen oder Jugendliche das selber zu recherchieren. Wir unterstützen jedes Jahr Schülerinnen und Schüler dabei, Praktika in Unternehmen oder Forschungseinrichtungen zu machen im Bereich Wissenschaft, Technologie. 4 Wochen im Sommer ist auch bezahlt, also ist gar nicht so, ist gar nicht einfach ohne Lohn, um einfach mal wirklich reinzuschnuppern. Wir hatten gerade die Prämierungsveranstaltung für letztes Jahr, da sind super tolle Sachen dabei. Und ich weiß nicht, wie es bei einigen Schülerinnen und Schülern an AHS ist. Mein Kind 1 maturiert derzeit und manchmal wissen die nicht so richtig, was sie dann danach machen sollen. Oder ich weiß jetzt nicht, wie es hier im Raum aussieht. Deswegen besonders für AHS-Maturanten, also die Gymnasium, die vielleicht eher humanistische Bildung gehabt haben, wo man nicht so einen großen Schwerpunkt auf die Naturwissenschaften hatten, bieten wir jetzt dann ab Mai an ein neues Format, GoTech heißt das. Wo man nach der Matura dann für 3 bis 6 Monate in ein Technologieunternehmen gehen kann, auch gezahlt, um da mal reinzuschnuppern und zu gucken, ist das was für mich oder möchte ich wieder lieber was anderes machen, komme ich wieder zu unseren Space Ladies da hinten zurück, die gelernt haben, man kann tatsächlich auch Weltraumrecht studieren und dann zum Beispiel in einem Ministerium in der Weltraumabteilung anfangen.
Dann würde ich genau bei dem Thema gerne noch einmal einhaken. Kinder und Jugendliche ist so wichtig. Sie haben AHS-Angehörige erwähnt, die haben ja schon einen relativ nahen Zugang zur Wissenschaft, aber es gibt viele Kinder und Jugendliche, die noch viel weiter weg von der Wissenschaft sind. Frau Generaldirektorin, wie schaffen Sie es, diese Kinder und Jugendlichen, die einfach wirklich sehr, sehr wissenschaftsfern, vielleicht auch bildungsfern sind, wie schaffen Sie es, die anzusprechen und ins Museum zu holen?
Ich muss sagen, eine der schönsten Initiativen auf dieser Richtung ist die Ausschreibung von Sparkling Science. Das ist eine Ausschreibung vom Forschungsministerium, wo wirklich die ganzen Schulklassen kommen. In der Schulklasse sind einfach mal alle beisammen. Und die Projekte, die wir hier am Haus schon hatten und auch immer noch durchführen, die sind einfach total cool. Also bei einem Projekt, da ging es um Wildtierkriminalität, also auch um den illegalen Import von Tieren. Dann konnte man sich die hier angucken. Es gab vom Zoll Vorträge, auch von der UNDC, also wirklich von der Internationalen Behörde zur Bekämpfung der internationalen Kriminalität. Und man konnte hands-on was machen und die Schülerinnen und Schüler haben sich aber schon auch mit Bewusstseinsbildung beschäftigt. Oder wir hatten eine Ausstellung zu Brasilien und die haben uns dann gesagt, ob wir uns so, wie wir selber gedacht haben, uns mit kolonialen Kontexten beschäftigen, das auch tun. Also das war eine total spannende Rückmeldung. Jetzt gibt es ein Projekt, da geht es auch sehr stark um Geräusche in der Stadt und letztlich auch um eine Bewusstseinsbildung. Es geht um Lebensqualität, um Biodiversität in Räumen und auch da spielen die Kinder eine ganz große Rolle, weil sie auch die Sachen wieder zurückfüttern in unser wissenschaftliches System. Und auch da sind ja alle dabei und wir wollen eben dieses offene Haus sein. Und wir merken das auch über so Besucherstrukturanalysen, heißt das auch schlau, also dass wenn Menschen älter sind, nicht mehr alle kommen. Also es kommen dann eher Menschen mit höheren Bildungsabschlüssen und Menschen, die einfach auch mehr Einkommen haben. Das wissen wir und deswegen sind uns die Schülerinnen und Schüler auch so wahnsinnig wichtig, weil das die Grundlage ist für den Rest des Lebens. Also wie man da inspiriert wird, das nimmt man oft mit, ja, bis zum Rentenalter.
Ich nehme mit auf schlau, ich liebe diese Formulierung. Das Ziel ist, es gibt multiples Engagement, um viele Kinder, Jugendliche hier ins Museum zu locken, damit sie sich dann schlau fühlen und schlau werden. Vielen, vielen Dank an alle 4 Vertreterinnen. Nochmal einen riesengroßen Applaus. Danke. Und damit geht es nahtlos weiter mit dem Heinz Oberhummer Award, organisiert, präsentiert durch die Science Buster. Wir starten mit einem Video. Film ab, bitte.
Vielen Dank. Vielen Dank, herzlich willkommen zum Heinz Oberhummer Award 2026 oder wie es im Laufe des Abends eher klingen wird, wenn auch mit österreichischem Akzent. Good evening, welcome to Heinz Oberhummer Award for Science Communication number 11 as part of the long night of research in Vienna's Natural History Museum. Welcome and welcome as well everyone who is joining us via live stream wherever you are. My name is Martin Puntigam. I will be your host tonight. Each year we come together to honor Heinz Oberhummer, who not only was a great physicist, but as you know, a great science communicator. The prize in his name is organized by the Science Busters in collaboration with the University of Graz, Vienna University of Technology, Austrian Broadcasting Corporation, the Ministry for Women, Science and Research, and the city of Vienna. The award comes with a prize money. It's 20,000 euros, which is fine, but even better and more important, it comes with a beautiful trophy. You can see it here. It's a jar of alpaca droppings, each year freshly harvested at family Oberhummer's alpaca farm. And as always, many thanks for the donation. You might ask why alpaca dropping? It's easy to answer. Heinz nearly always had a glass of alpaca droppings with him, and I'm sure he would be amused knowing that every time people remember him, they are also thinking of alpaca poo. What can we expect from tonight? It will be a colorful evening, a celebration of science communication, and as always, there will be music. Trained in the famous Taverne Obertauern, a globally known breeding ground for reckless talents, Heinz was a brute force on the electric guitar, and we are delighted that the Heinz Oberhomer tribute band is here with us tonight and will play in his spirit. Today, this year is not only special because it's the 11th Heinz Oberhomer Award, and 11 was a prime number, and Heinz would have liked that. But we are also celebrating a milestone birthday, because in a couple of weeks, Heinz would have turned 85. Born back in 1941, 19th of May, in Bischofshofen, Salzburg, as it says in his birth certificate, at Adolf Hitler Straße number 13, which could have been a burden, but throughout his life he had no connection to the Führer or any bigger than life authority like God. On the contrary, he was a passionate atheist, he was a passionate scientist and a keen advocate for enlightenment. He wanted to tell people how exciting science is, how fascinating the universe is, far more exciting than any narrative of salvation, far more exciting, far more fascinating than any ideology. And that's important to keep in mind given the hostility against science nowadays, the spread of lies, euphemistically called fake news, the warmongering all around us, and the rise of conspiracy theories. Heinz would have been stunned, to be honest. He wouldn't have despaired, but he would have jumped a little less high than normally. But eventually it wouldn't have stopped him, it wouldn't have minimized his power, his energy when entertaining people whilst making them wiser. He would have just put out his jar of alpaca droppings, told the people it's his talisman, talked about alpacas, how sweet they are, and then he would have raved about science whole evenings long, about the universe, about nearly immortal bacteria, about gigantic mouse galaxies, or it would have talked about atoms of Jesus Christ, which can be found in a remarkable number inside every one of us. Or he even might have talked about the Holy Spirit as atheist, because as the Science Busters in our shows, we thought what would happen to the Holy Spirit when he comes to earth, like in a couple of weeks at Pentecost, when he descends from great heights, comes down to earth in form of a pigeon.
1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, rock. 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, rock. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Eine Schutzbrille und Schutzhandschuhe.
Schutzhandschuhe für Sie, Arbeitshandschuhe sagen andere.
Einmal, dann das zweite.
Die nächste Sonderprüfung für einen Theoretiker ist ein Fingerhandschuh, kein Fäustling.
Nein, wenn man sich schnell bewegt, dann vergeht die Zeit langsamer.
Ja, das kommt dir vielleicht nur so vor.
Nein, das ist tatsächlich so. Das hat herausgefunden der große Ingenieur unseres Universums, der Experte schlechthin, Albert Einstein. Der hat erkannt, dass in unserem Universum Zeit und Raum zusammenhängen.
Das war die Grundlage, dass man irgendwann einmal in der Zeit reisen kann?
Albert Einstein hat das erste Mal diese Relativitätstheorie aufgestellt. Kurt Gödel, das ist der links neben den, der. Nicht der?
Gut, dass Sie es dazu sagen, danke. Ja.
Ja. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
Und wenn der Heilige Geist als Taube kommt, wie es ja auch oft als Symbol dargestellt wird, wie sich viele vorstellen, kann man das eigentlich ausrechnen, ab welcher Höhe müsste er von oben im Sturzflug runtersausen, dass er unten gut durchgebraten ankommt?
Also diese Rechnung ist gar nicht so einfach, aber ein Theoretiker kann das natürlich durchführen, theoretischer Physiker. Nehmen wir mal an, der Heilige Geist oder diese Taube kommt von 39 Kilometer Höhe, wo der Felix Baumgartner von dieser Höhe auch abgesprungen ist. Da wird er nicht sehr warm, wird sich nicht sehr erhitzen, aber ein Vorteil, er würde durch die Lufttreibung gerupft. Die Federn würden einfach davonfliegen.
Das heißt, die Geschwindigkeit ist hoch genug, sobald er in die Lufthülle eintaucht, wird er gerupft und kommt aber roh unten an.
Kommt roh unten an. Über 400 Kilometer Höhe, da bekommt er dann schon eine Geschwindigkeit von 13.000 Kilometer pro Stunde. Das heißt, außen wird es dann 3.600 Grad. Das heißt, diese Taube würde einfach verglühen. Die würde nichts mehr überbleiben, außer ein paar Atome und Moleküle.
Und könnte man das sehen?
Natürlich, als Sternschnuppe in der Nacht könnte man das sehen. Das war dann der vergebliche Versuch des Heiligen Geistes, die Erde zu erreichen. Aber wenn diese Taube startet bei 72 Kilometer, kommt es auf ungefähr 2000 Kilometer pro Stunde, hat außen 272 Grad, innen 79 Grad, also außen ist sie knusprig und innen well dran.
Unforgettable sounds, and maybe the reason why the universe still is expanding. Science communication is not only fun, but it's also important nowadays to hold high the banner of enlightenment, to check facts, and to use the scientific method when seeking the truth. Because we humans, we are great, we are capable of a lot of things. We tend to believe things, which is fine. We tend to make things up. We use our imagination, our fantasy, which can lead to spectacular ideas, but we are best at deceiving ourselves, taking a wrong turn and still believing it's the right one. So to be sure from ourselves, to be safe from ourselves, we invented science. And it is important to talk about science, but not only like a scientist. It is important to talk about science for the general public via science communication, and it works best using joy and humor. And that's just one of the many reasons why Sandy Toksvig is the winner 2026. And to introduce her, it's easier to mention the things she has not been doing yet. She is actor, she is comedian, feminist, she is political activist, not only for gender justice. She regularly speaks out in the public on political issues. She writes for children and adults as well, and currently she helps to develop a digital atlas in cooperation with the University of Cambridge called Mappa Mundi, to document the lives, the voices, the experiences, the expertise, but also the struggle and defeats of women all over the world throughout history to make them everywhere accessible and visible. And of course, to many of you, she is also known as the presenter and host of the famous BBC panel show QI.
Right, let's start with a really riveting question.
To be honest, I understood none of that.
Sandy, I thought I understood you, but
I'm like a magnet. Which is the most thrilling part of a theme park?
Well, when you don't die.
Yeah, I never die.
is that because you're not tall enough for the ride?
Yes. Does anybody know where I was the 20th of July, 1969?
Denmark. Were you faking the footage?
Oh, that's brilliant!
How do you think a fight between a submarine and a stallion would go?
Stallion's a horse. A
Yes.
submarine is a submersible.
Nothing gets past you. I was in mission control in Houston.
You were?
I was. So when Neil Armstrong stepped out of the moon, I was holding his secretary's hand. I haven't seen him for ages. I don't know why we didn't stay friends.
So the eagle has landed, and we are glad she's here today in Vienna. I'm sure Heinz and Sandy would have gotten on splendidly, although Heinz was a passionate atheist and he took no prisoners when it came to religion. And Sandy had her first job as lightning technician on the musical Jesus Christ Superstar. Please give a big hand and a warm welcome for Sandy Toksvig.
Okay, so my talk, I don't know if I'm supposed to make it go forward. Can you make it go forward to the first slide for me at the back? There we go. My talk is called What Are the Chances? There we go. What are the chances? So I'm very interested when the universe suddenly decides to speak to you. What are the chances that I would hear 3 speeches by politicians and only understand the word startup? That's it. I have no idea what they said, but I'm sure it was brilliant. Sometimes the world, it depends on your luck. If you are unlucky enough to lose an eye, you might have it replaced by a glass eye. My grandfather had 2 glass eyes, and yet he could see perfectly well. Now, how is this possible? Well, like a lot of science, it is a riddle. It is a question that we have to think about. And in order to solve this, we have to find new ways of thinking. So a further riddle is why I'm here at all this evening. It seems very strange, and I phoned my friend Catherine, who has been my friend for many years, and I said, I'm going to Vienna to receive some alpaca droppings. And instead of asking me why, she said, when? And I told her it was today. She said, well, the same week, in fact, it was yesterday, she was coming to Vienna to have her great-uncle's geological collection restituted here in the museum. We have come together to do this. It happened yesterday, and the collection is the other side of this wall. What are the chances that we would do this together? I have to say, in my life, winning this award for science communication seems about as likely as a camel being struck by lightning. Now, here is the weird thing. Because I am, as the British say, a nerd, which, as I understand in German, is a nerd, as it happens, I know what the chances are of camels being struck by lightning. In 1997, a camel at Knowsley Safari Park in Merseyside, which I have very helpfully placed on a map for you. Now, we have to come to some kind of understanding here that I have done my best with the research. This map is as accurate as I have been able to make it, unlike this one by the American news network CNN, which shows the world the location of Hong Kong. Anyway, this camel was minding its own business when there was a freak summer storm, and it was killed by a lightning strike. And we know this because it is so rare. So camels, as you can imagine, they're outside all the time. And every minute of every day, there are about 1,800 thunderstorms threatening them, and indeed the rest of us, with lightning somewhere on Earth. Nevertheless, the chances of this happening to anybody, let alone a camel, are so slight that all of you are more likely to die falling out of bed. Unless, of course, you are in America, where I can tell you that there is a higher probability of dying via legal execution than by lightning strike. I don't know what this says about the American judicial system, and however unlikely this is as an event for you, I would have felt bad if I hadn't warned you. Now, I know all this because there are marvelous people who make it their business to investigate these things. This really niche scientific study of the injuries and deaths caused by lightning strikes is called kerenopathology. It comes from the Greek kerenos, or thunderbolt, and according to kerenopathologists, can I just say, not a job that ever occurred to me when I was growing up, 80% of all people who are hit by lightning are men, and most casualties occur on a Sunday afternoon in a large field, or as we like to call it, golf. Now, why do I keep all these things in my head? Why do so many of us revel in long nights of research, lange Nacht der Forschung? I think it's because it's comforting. So I am married to a psychotherapist. We have been very happily married for 20 years. It's a perfect combination. I spend all my time giving speeches, and she spends her time listening. It's perfect. And from her, what I have learnt is that there's a fundamental principle in mental health that structure reduces anxiety. So maybe We all cling on to as many facts as possible because we hope that we will understand the world a little bit better. We'll feel a little less lost. We'll feel a little less likely to be unexpectedly struck down by lightning. Life is very challenging, so knowing things like this, if you look at that number, isn't that pleasing? 111 times 11111 becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It feels like there is structure, okay? And maybe that's the uncertainty of existence seeming more manageable and somehow more pleasing. Of course, the trouble with being the kind of person who finds pleasure in this is it makes you question everything. So I'm not a mathematician, but when I looked at calculating at the way in which Donald Trump has calculated how many wars he has actually won, I was inclined to believe that he's not very good at numbers. And I backed this up with a statement that he made in 1989 when he said, I tell you, it's big business. If there's one word to describe Atlantic City, it's big business. Or 2 words, big business. When confronted by those in charge who seem less than competent, it is comforting to know that history and science teaches us that no matter how rich or powerful someone might be, we all have one thing in common. We are all going to die. So in his time, Attila the Hun was a terrifying individual, very aggressive. He led brutal campaigns, terrorized the Eastern and Western Roman empires from 343 to 453 AD. He was called the Scourge of God. He famously ransacked over 70 cities. He murdered his own brother in order to keep power, which does not go well at the dinner table. And it pleases me to know that his rampage of terror came to an end on his wedding night when he died of a nosebleed. So tonight, let us comfort ourselves in the world of research. I'm so excited to be here in this land where in 1900, in this very great city, the snow globe was invented by Erwin Petzi, while he was actually trying to create a brighter surgical lamp. And that is human endeavor in a nutshell, trying to do something grand and life-changing, but making tiny snow inside a glass instead. Can I just say, I couldn't be here without mentioning that this is the land, of course, that gave us the great Hedy Lamarr, the actress and inventor born here in Vienna, who developed frequency hopping technology during World War II. She's very often called the mother of Wi-Fi. Ingeborg Hochmeier, a key figure in audio engineering. She designed the very first multi-channel cochlear implant, which significantly advanced hearing rehabilitation technology. Lisa Meitner, also from Vienna, whose work in discovering nuclear fission, along with Otto Hahn, revolutionized physics, despite the fact, of course, she was overlooked for the Nobel Prize. And if that makes you a little tearful, let's not forget the other local, Helene Winterstein-Kampersberg, who developed the formula for waterproof mascara. So, 4 fabulous women, all amazing. And may I say, what a marvelous thing for me to win a prize for science communication without the bother of having done any science whatsoever. So I'm grateful. We saw a picture earlier of Albert Einstein. He famously did a lot of science. Back in 1915, he presented the complete general theory of relativity. This is an AI-generated image explaining the theory of relativity. I feel our world is safe in the hands of computers. I'm very pleased with this. Anyway, after Albert thought of all this space-time stuff, he spent the next 10 years hoping that he would win a Nobel Prize for it. Not because he was so clever, which he was, but because, and here is proof that we are all human, including the most brilliant, the year before he had separated from his wife, Maliva, and he had promised her that she would get the money from the Nobel Prize he was very sure he was going to win. And this would support their 2 sons and leave him free to marry his cousin. The good news is that I'm here to collect my award, I'm not getting divorced, and I'm not marrying a close relative. That is a theory of relativity which is not for me. Didn't know if that would work. I once spent an entire weekend working out how to explain the theory of relativity in a really simple manner for QI, for the show that I do in Britain, using a ping pong ball and a toy train. And I spent the entire weekend, and I thought it was a brilliant thing, and it never came up once during the show. I was really upset because I'd worked so hard, but everyone else failed to see the gravity of the situation, so it was upsetting. Being clear about science is not always easy. Einstein didn't get the Nobel for this particular piece of work because the committee felt that there was a lack of experimental confirmation of the theory, which is not true, because in 1919, the English astrophysicist and mathematician Sir Arthur Stanley Eddington had confirmed Einstein's predictions. My favorite bit of this story is that when news of Eddington's confirmation broke, the New York Times sent the only reporter they had in London, a man called Henry Crouch, who was their golf correspondent. What are the chances of golf coming up twice? And Henry didn't know anything about science at all. So what he actually wrote was, lights all askew in the heavens, men of science more or less agog over results of eclipse observations. Einstein theory triumphs, stars not where they seemed or were calculated to be, but nobody need worry. Nobody need worry. Knowing facts helps us to not worry. We cling on to them. They make the world seem less challenging. But I am always fascinated by what people choose to research. So the range is extraordinary. In the early 1960s, two scientists, Dr. Martin Shine and Dr. Edward Hale, at Pennsylvania State University, did a series of experiments trying to encourage male chickens and turkeys to have sex. Okay? Now, I'm afraid I don't know if this is Martin or Edward. I certainly don't know the name of the bird. But the question is, why would they do this? So they were trying to find out what makes farmed birds interested in sex. So if you are breeding edible birds, then you want them to have sex, right? Because you want to make more edible birds. I'm not interested in business, but sometimes it's not that complicated. So in the wild, a male turkey who's getting ready to have sex, getting ready to mate, does a sort of shuffling dance. It's like a lot of men trying to impress. It is not the smoothest thing you've ever seen. So the turkey puffs up his chest, he pulls at his neck, he highlights his fanned tail, and he makes a slow move towards the female turkey, and then he drags the tips of his wings on the ground, doing a sort of tango step, and then hope that she decides to sit down. You can see the same thing in any bar in the world on a Saturday night. It's no different. So if you are breeding turkeys in captivity, this dance will help you to know when breeding is about to start. And in the 1950s and 1960s, farmers of birds noticed that the male turkeys were becoming less interested in having sex, and they wanted to know why. So first they needed to know what would make a male turkey excited. And so these two scientists, Dr. Shine and Dr. Hale, decided to find out. First they got a taxidermy model of a female turkey. So they put this stuffed model of a female into a pen with all of the active males. Now, it turns out that boy turkeys, not very fussy, just as happy with this stuffed model as the real thing. They happily tried to have sex with it. So then they tried to work, which bit was it that made the boys excited? And they did this by slowly removing bits of the model. So first they got rid of the feet, made no difference. Then they got rid of the wings. Eventually, they got rid of the entire body of the stuffed turkey until there was just a head and a neck on a stick. And the boy turkeys, still ready for it. It turned out the most exciting thing for a boy turkey was a freshly severed, freshly cut off female head on a stick. If that wasn't available, a dried boy's head or a 2-year-old withered female head, and still eliciting a response from the boys, a plain piece of wood on a stick. What in general does this tell us about the male of the species? Well, it kind of makes sense, because when a male turkey is in the mating position, his body covers the entirety of the female except for the head. It's the only bit they can see, and therefore it is the most exciting. What's astonishing about this research is it took them 5 years to work this out. And it was such a success that, having worked it out with turkeys, they moved on to chickens. I love their intensity. Was it a waste of time? What's it all got to do with us? Well, it's all about being willing to do research even if you don't know what you are going to find. Understanding the behavior in animals gives us the potential to understand how instincts may work in other creatures, and that includes ourselves. So, for example, chickens kept in cages develop what's called brittle cage disease. It's a severe depletion, loss of bone calcium. It leads to thin, brittle bones, spontaneous fractures, and already studies of chickens have been used in osteoporosis research and have helped us to understand how our own bones function. And at the core of absolutely all research, however bizarre, is always the same thing, and that's curiosity. How grateful we should be that Antony von Leeuwenhoek was curious about his teeth. So Antony was a Dutchman. He sold cloth for a living. He was so good that in 1654 he opened up his own shop. Now maybe, I don't know, because he was greeting customers all day, he liked to keep his teeth nice. So he used to rub them with salt every morning. And then one morning he'd been fiddling away with his teeth and he saw all these bits on his hand, the dirty bits that he'd rubbed off, and he thought, I'll have a look under a microscope. It's incredible, but until he did that, no one had thought of it. And here he discovered a host of living things. A single drop of liquid containing as many as 50 million tiny free-living cells. On the 17th of September, 1683, he became the first person to report the existence of bacteria, and he changed the world forever. I have to tell you, I've been cleaning my teeth for years. It never occurred to me to have a look. I haven't done it. But you should, all of you. You are, all of you, awash with life. If you could count, one of you, the bacteria on your skin, the number is roughly equal to the population of humans on Earth. We are all vast colonies of microscopic life. I mean, look at the person next to you. It's probably not something you want to think about the person who's sitting next to you. We know that bacteria exists, but probably we don't want to think about it. Certainly the British did not want to think about it. The first ever British demand for film censorship occurred in 1903. It wasn't porn. It wasn't even turkeys having sex with a stick. It was to do with bacteria. There was a scientist named Charles Urban, and he made a film showing the bacterial activity in a single piece of English Stilton cheese. So the film was 2.5 minutes. It was called The Cheese Mites. It shows a man sitting down to his lunch. He decides to look at his cheese with a magnifying glass, and he finds it crawling with life. It was the first science film for the general public ever, and the cheese industry, I'm going to guess they're known as the Cheese Board, was outraged and demanded that this horror film be banned. This was not something people wanted to spread on their lunch. So curiosity is key. You have to keep looking at things in order to understand them. And then we have to try not to be contained by old ways of thinking. Of course, it doesn't always work, right? So in 1965, there was a childless couple called George and Charlotte Blonsky, and they thought there were problems sometimes for women giving birth. And they came up with a machine that was going to make it easier for women to do this. And they thought the best thing to use was centrifugal force. So they invented a machine which involves strapping a pregnant woman to a large circular padded table, which would then rotate at high speed, very similar to the forces experienced by fighter pilots, so up to 8G, which would cause the baby to be propelled through the birth canal, out of the mother, and into a net, waiting to catch the baby. Weirdly, it didn't, as it were, take off. Sometimes the key is not in finding a new answer, but in asking a new question. Be alive to what is actually happening. Think of all those inventions that we now take for granted, which nobody knew at the time that we were looking for. So Percy Spencer, 1945, he was working on radar technology, and he noticed that a chocolate bar had melted in his pocket, and it led to the creation of microwave cooking. Alexander Fleming, 1928, he came back, he was a very untidy man. He'd left a messy lab, and he found mold killing bacteria in a petri dish and discovered penicillin, revolutionized medicine. Dr. Henry Coover, 1942, was trying to make a plastic gun sight, and he created a substance that instead stuck to everything, which we now call superglue. I give a lot of speeches, and my main intent is always to see if I could trigger a new thought in somebody's head. Sometimes we do it by having a look at the funny side of things. Sometimes it's just trying to come up with a new way of looking at things. So what we're going to do, we're going to play a very quick game in the room called Good Neighbor, Bad Neighbor, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name something, and you have to decide whether you'd like to live next door to the thing that I've named, okay? So would they make a nice neighbor or not such a nice neighbor? If you think you would like to live next door to the thing I have named, please will you raise your hand? If you don't want to live next door to them because you think they make a very bad neighbor, please keep your hand in your lap. Okay, so let's start with galaxies. Okay, is it a good neighbor or a bad neighbor to have a galaxy next door? Put your hand up if you think it is good, and put your hand in your lap if you think it is bad. No, terrible neighbors, terrible, absolutely dreadful neighbors. Because when they reach a certain age, galaxies stop spawning new stars. They just swallow the ones next door. So if you have a galaxy next door, it's going to get you at some point. Our own home galaxy, the Milky Way, is expected quite soon. I mean, I say that, it's in space years. It's like 4 billion years. It's not like tomorrow. To eat two of its neighbors, the large and small Magellanic Clouds. But then eventually it will be eaten itself by the Andromeda Galaxy. So it's a different way of thinking about galaxies. Speaking of eating, let's try hyenas. Good or bad neighbors? Hands up for good, hands in your lap for bad. Excellent neighbors, excellent neighbors. Yes, because they'll eat the things you don't like. It's absolutely fantastic. They tend not to attack you because you're living right next door. So they're a marvelous thing. What about newlyweds, people who've just got married? Good neighbor, hands up. Bad neighbor, hand in your lap. What do you think? Good neighbors, bad neighbors? No, terrible neighbors, terrible neighbors. Yeah, they did a survey in Colorado. They found that people are much happier if they believe that they're having more sex than the neighbors. That's the... So having a honeymoon couple next door, just so depressing. I once lived in a flat. There were two honeymooners next door who had a water bed. It was a hideous noise. Anyway, let's try this one. Gloomy octopuses. Hands up for good neighbors. Hands in your lap for bad neighbors. No, terrible neighbors. Terrible, especially females. So they're most commonly known as the common Sydney octopus. This particular one, this lives in the Jervis Bay in Australia. And where they live is so crowded that they constantly assert their personal space. And one of the ways, particularly the females, is that they just pick up any rubbish and throw it at whoever is next door. So this is the most extraordinary thing because the use of weapons like this, throwing weapons in animals, is really rare. And it is always the females trying to say, could you please not live next door? Last one, what do we think? Burglars, good neighbors or bad neighbors? Hands up for good neighbors. Yeah, excellent neighbors, really good. They did a survey of convicted burglars, and they found that they don't like to steal from people next door. So from your point of view, the best place for a burglar to live is right next door to you. Apparently they don't do it. So, what I'm trying to say to you, the job of a communicator is to try and reframe old thoughts, to encourage new ones, and to always say to everybody that the honest answer, I don't know, is the first step towards knowledge. Now you could say, but I'm being very old-fashioned. Why do we have to think at all when we have AI to think for us? I have been doing these presentations for decades. I've been on television now in Britain for 46 years. And I've always, when I do one of these things, I always put together my own pictures. And until recently, I just did it with photographs. Then last year, I thought I would try one of those AI picture generators. And I didn't know what to ask it for. So the first thing I asked it for a picture of myself. So I typed in my name, and I got this. And then I was asked if I wanted to make any changes. I said, well, I'd quite like to look a little bit less like I've been drinking. That would be. So I thought I'd try something else. I have been married to a woman for many, many years, and I asked for a general picture of a lesbian, and I got this. I've been one for years. I have no idea what's happening in this picture. I don't. So I played around, and I was shocked to discover that AI has an even more misogynistic view of the world, a male-dominated view of the world than I could have predicted. If you ask for a depiction of a general journalist, you get this. This is an author, and this is a woman at work. This is a person in charge, and this is a happy woman. It's a woman who's happy to laugh alone with salad. And it's not just AI's view of the world which should worry us, but also our own. Let's take a look at the recent Artemis II mission by NASA. Not just to the moon, but further than any human has ever traveled before. Some of the most exciting scientific research imaginable. It touches us all. So the thing that we know is that the human body is made mainly of water and proteins and fats and mineral nutrients, and these substances, the bits that make us, are in turn made up by chemical elements, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, created during a supernova explosion. Most of what we are made of inside stars, which were distributed through space in the form of stardust. We are made of stardust. And the pictures from Artemis, they were absolutely amazing. And having been present, as I was, at the in mission control in Houston for Apollo 11, when Neil Armstrong stepped out into the moon, it really had an enormous impact on me. But even then, when we see something and we're so amazed by it, we have to watch ourselves and never assume that information we are sure is right, and that we shouldn't question it. This is my greatest lesson I've learned in all research. Be prepared to have all of your answers questioned. So this is an extremely famous image from NASA, 1972. It's known as the blue marble. This is a photograph taken from Apollo 17 with the south of the planet at the top, because the astronaut Harrison Schmitt, who took it, was spinning around at the time. So if we go in a little tiny bit closer, you can see the outline of Africa, which from our point of view appears to be upside down. When this famous picture was first published, NASA decided to flip it to avoid confusing people. No one would think it was right because we are all used to seeing the world with the north on the top. So if I show you this, it seems sort of weird, doesn't it? I mean, you can tell it's weird because it actually says world upside down map. But there is no reason for the planet to be constantly presented like this, with the north on the top. This is a globe made of Lego. Because I'm Danish, I thought I'd just mention it. But if you go to the wonderful Globe Museum here in Vienna, you'll see hundreds of examples where the world looks like this. So this is a traditional map of all the countries of the world. This is known as the Mercator projection. first presented by the Flemish geographer and mapmaker Gerardus Mercator in 1569. I like lots of things about this map. I'm very used to it. I'm sure we're all used to looking at it. I love the fact that it was made by a man who never went anywhere. Okay, he never traveled. Well, he once went from Belgium to Germany, but this so exhausted him that he never did anything else. And yet this way we look at the world has become the standard thing that's in our head. It is the standard map for navigation because it represents latitude and longitude as straight lines. So it meant that explorers in the 17th and the 18th century, they could look at it and decide, I'm going to sail really fast to somebody else's country and steal their stuff. It just looks really easy. But it is full of incredibly flawed information. It massively inflates the size of the lands the further they are from the equator. I mean, look at that. It's no wonder Trump wants Greenland. It looks enormous. It looks as big as Africa, but it's actually the size of Algeria. The countries above the equator take up about 2/3 of the page space, and what it does is it diminishes the importance of the southern continents and nations, whose populations are largely people of color, and it promotes a colonialist, imperialist point of view. We need to rethink what we know, and I think it is time that we begin to look at the world differently. Let me tell you a very quick story. Sometime between 1200 and 1300, a person, unknown, or possibly a group of persons, in a convent in Ebstorf in Germany, sat down and they sewed 30 goat skins together. So this is a big 12-foot square thing, and on this, presumably rather smelly surface, they proceeded to draw what's known as the Ebstorf map. There it is, and it illustrated everything that they knew about the world. It's an incredible thing, had 2,345 pictures and written entries. It's a sort of, if you like, medieval encyclopedia of world history, using a combination of real places and biblical locations, mythical events. It was the world's largest world map. From the Middle Ages, it was known as the Ebstorf Mappa Mundi. What's incredible about it, it's so amazing, is that we don't know who made it. So the online encyclopedia Wikipedia will tell you for certain that the map was made by an Englishman called Gervase of Tilbury. Now, there was such a man, and he was very fond of writing things down. He was the author of something called Otia Imperiala, an encyclopedic description of the world, which he dedicated to the Holy Roman Emperor Otto IV of Brunswick. I was giving you a choice here. These are 4 depictions of Otto, who I don't know much about him. I think he spent most of his time trying to choose the right hat. Now, by chance, the Ebstorf convent, where the map was made, was run for 1 year by a man called Gervase. It's a very unusual name at the time in Germany. So lots of people decided, lots of historians decided, that the guy running the convent must be the same guy who wrote the encyclopedic description of the world, because we know that he liked conjuring up descriptions of the globe, so he must have made the Ebstorf map. But how likely is it that he was the same person? If he had always been known as Gervase of Tilbury when he was working for the Holy Roman Emperor, why would he suddenly just call himself Gervase? And did he have time in 1 year to make such a big map? So most people think it's very unlikely. Much more likely is that the nuns who ran the convent were famous for their art, and also it's a heck of a thing to be made by one person. And here's a crazy idea. Maybe a group of women together created this detailed view of the world. Maybe the facts, what is recorded in Wikipedia, is wrong. But we shouldn't be surprised, because mostly Wikipedia and women don't mix. Wikipedia, the online encyclopedia, was launched in 2001. It's written and maintained worldwide by volunteers. It's a massive piece of research. It's astonishing that within 20 years, it has become the largest piece of knowledge in humanity's history. It is the most read reference work ever written. So, kind of a modern Mappamundi, an attempt to write down what the world is like. Millions of articles. Unfortunately, what we know about this huge piece of work is it suffers from deep bias. Much like the creative nuns who I believe made the Ebstorf map, women in this new draft of history are being left out. Only 17% of biographies in Wikipedia are about women. And this is not surprising, because, certainly for English Wikipedia, 85% of contributors report their gender as male, while for foreign language versions, it's 90%. For women to get a biographical page is really tough. And she's much more likely, if she does get a page, to suffer something called a drive-by deletion. So she's eliminated as soon as she's put up because she's not worthy of being in Wikipedia. Let me tell you about Donna Strickland, amazing Canadian scientist. Her work centers around generating laser beams with ultra-short pulses. It's groundbreaking stuff. I know more about camels than I do about the work that she does. And for some years, people tried to get a biography of her put up on Wikipedia. And every time it was put up, she was deemed not important enough. She finally got her biography on the day that she won the Nobel Prize for Physics. That is what it takes for women to be included in Wikipedia. And she's not unusual. To pick any day, so I thought we'd just pick today. We picked today is April the 24th. So according to Wikipedia, the very first thing that happened today, in case you're interested, was in 1479 BC, when Thutmose III ascended to the throne of Egypt. It's not all that interesting, except that he was only just 2 years old, and on the whole, the world doesn't do that well with toddlers in charge. So his stepmother, Hatshepsut, took charge as she became Egypt's second confirmed woman who ruled in her own right. Check her out. Amazing. She introduced a tremendous period of great prosperity and peace. She was one of the most prolific builders in ancient Egypt. She oversaw large construction projects like the Karnak Temple complex, the Spios Artemidos, and most famously, the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut. And after a few years of ruling as a sort of babysitter to her stepson, she decided she liked it. She thought she was good at it. She wanted to become a full-on pharaoh and rule not for her stepson, but alongside him. But nobody thought they were that comfortable with a woman doing it, so what she did was she started wearing men's clothes and a false beard. Same woman just decided to put on a false beard. She transformed the governance of Egypt into the most incredible organized bureaucratic system. And what happened when she died? Were they grateful? No, her stepson and then his son tried to completely remove her from the official accounts of Egyptian history. Her statues were destroyed, her monuments were defaced, and lots of her achievements were ascribed to other pharaohs. Under her leadership, which is 1,500 years before Cleopatra, Egypt had opened up new trade routes, created an environment for innovation and experimentation, but she was nearly erased from history. The fact that she is mentioned at all today is really remarkable, because you look and see what else happened today. So the only other woman who really gets a mention, 15-year-old Mary, Queen of Scots, marries the 14-year-old Dauphin of France. Nobody's surprised. They'd been engaged since she was 6 and he was 5. Boys did lots of things. There were lots of wars. Today, in 1800, the United States Library of Congress was established. President John Adams signed legislation appropriating $5,000 to purchase such books as may be necessary for the use of Congress. I believe they haven't used all the money yet. Women, we took the day off pretty much. Apart from 1885, when the American sharpshooter Annie Oakley was hired to be part of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. And this so exhausted the females of the species that we did nothing else. It's a wonder that I'm here today. I'm so tired at the thought of having to do something. So then you could say, okay, you told us to have a different thing. But of course there were fewer women. Women traditionally had much less opportunity to be on the public stage. But if you dig a little deeper, if you do your research, you will find out that is not right. Like the history of the great pharaoh Hatshepsut, what stories there are have so often been skewed and misrepresented. A bit like this is one of my favorite possessions. This is a plate produced in 1915 in Denmark, which commemorates all the men who got women the vote. One of the greatest tragedies of the modern era is what is happening in Afghanistan. So the exclusion of women from education in the name of Islam is shocking. Not that Wikipedia would help if you wanted to look into the relationship between this great world religion, women, and access to education. This is a 13th century image used by Wikipedia to illustrate an article about the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Sounds like a wonderful place to go and hang out. It was one of the world's largest public libraries during the Islamic Golden Age, so traditionally we're talking about the 8th to the 13th century. This picture shows users of the library. They're all boys with beards, unless it's a woman who's lost her tweezers. I don't know, I imagine it's just boys with beards. And it matters that it is wrong because the history of this great library disproves any belief that tradition holds that women should not or cannot be educated. The fact is, we know that people from all over Muslim civilization flocked to this place, and it wasn't just men. The users were male and female, of many faiths and ethnicities. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad was a center of intellectual activity in the Muslim world where men and women were welcome. They came from all over to read and write. Lots of languages were spoken. Women worked alongside men to advance their communities in education and medicine and culture. They were allowed to pray with men. They were allowed to take part in commerce and hold political power. Wikipedia doesn't mention them anywhere at all in the article. Everything is a man with a beard. And if I move on to a more general article about the Islamic age, I'm told improvements to the astrolabe were one of the great achievements of this period. So if you don't know about an astrolabe, it's still a marvelous thing. It's still in use today. It's considered the world's oldest astronomical computer. It was used to calculate time and location and direction. It was a programmable device used by astronomers in Europe and the Islamic world from the early Middle Ages. So vital for determining all sorts of things, a very significant device. What neither the initial article about the Islamic Golden Age nor the one I clicked through to more detail about the astrolabe mentions Maryam al-Astrolabi. Astrolabi. You don't think she might have had something to do with astrolabes, do you? Her surname indicates her profession. I don't have the exact dates, but somewhere in the 10th century, she was a famous maker of astrolabes, a Muslim woman in Aleppo who took the craft of building these beautiful instruments to the next level. The design of an astrolabe required her to work with very complicated mathematical calculations and precision. She became famous for her innovative ideas. She was employed by the emir of Aleppo, and over 1,000 years later, people who care about it still speak about her academic brilliance. If you check her specific article in Wikipedia, the focus is on the fact that she inspired a character in the Netflix series Vikings. That's it. And it's not just history which has a howling void where women ought to stand. I recently gave a lecture on the issues about information about women's health, including staggering data which shows that women are much more likely to die from a heart attack than men, because even medical people do not know that women have different symptoms when they have a heart attack. I talked about the Kahun Gynecological Papyrus. This was written almost 4,000 years ago in ancient Egypt. It is the oldest known medical text focusing on women's health. It's very obsessed, I have to tell you, with the womb as a source of pretty much everything that's wrong with women. There are the most marvelous descriptions of the terror of the room, the terror of the womb, which I thought sounded like a marvelous horror movie. So I got AI to make me an image, which I got this, which I was very pleased with. And then you can ask AI for a written description, and it just said, person with a red ball. The mythical Greek healer Melampus declared women's madness came from refusing to honor the phallus, from not having enough orgasms, and from having a sad uterus. And you just know I asked AI for an image of this. I got this. 4,000 years ago, we were seen as mad because of our wombs. Are we still? Hysterical. Hysteria, derived from the Greek word for uterus or womb. Definitely, because study after study has shown that women in pain are much more likely to be referred to a therapist than given painkillers. When the UN Charter was established in 1945, equality between men and women was everywhere. It was a key part of the UN. 2015, the UN said, we're going to achieve this. We're going to achieve this by 2030. In 2023, 7 years away from utter triumph, 78 years since they first set the goal, the UN issued a statement saying that this target was impossible. And some of you will be shocked by this because of deeply rooted biases against women around the world in health, education, employment, and the halls of power. The latest UN stats declare bluntly that the world, everybody, every society is failing women and girls by every measurable criteria. And this is not just some feminist rant, this matters for everybody. Because we know that equality helps all of us, our daughters and our sons, to thrive. Leave the women out of it, and boys start threatening each other to bomb themselves back to the Stone Age. So, question is, what do we do about it? How do we get everybody to pay attention? Well, I think the first thing we have to do is we have to think about how we research and how we gather information, and then how we present the information. So modern search and recommendation algorithms exploit both structural and textual information. So if the information is not there in the first place, or if the information is skewed, then AI will scrape that data and then add to that the problem of women and ethnic minorities suffering from lower visibility. It is an information issue that we cannot see how women are doing worldwide. And of course, I want to fill in the missing pages of history. If you can't see it, you can't be it. It matters to me. So for the last 4 years, I have been working on a project called the Mappamundi Project in tribute to the great nuns of the Ebsdorf convent. We have the technological capability to hold the world in our hands. We could do this. We don't need to do it on a goat skin. Look what I found in the gift shop. I was thrilled with it. I keep holding it like that. I just think it's better. So Wikipedia is unfixable. People have tried, okay? What we need to do is to create a technological version, a three-dimensional, interactive, global view of women's experiences with the intention of changing the world by changing how we look at it. It would be curated by women from all parts of the world. I would want to work in association, for example, with a university here in Austria. It would be story-led but data-driven. All of the facts would be correct. We would make sure that we are presenting the other half, the missing half of humanity's story. The aim is to allow everybody to experience life for women in any country. You could click on a country and it expand it and have a look and see what life is like there. And then put in all the missing information about women's art and history and music and so on. A new way to look at the world, which is not just boring numbers, but is intuitive, obvious, creative, compelling. This could be mapping the world in a brand new and really exciting way. And then once we've created a prototype, we would look at inhabiting women's experiences and try and see if we can't also look at other marginalized groups of people. And think of the impact that you could have with politicians. So if you had a globe that I could hold in my hand, and I asked the globe, can you please light up where domestic violence went up during COVID? The whole planet would light up. Imagine the impact of that. And then if I asked you, where did domestic violence stay up after COVID? The whole planet would light up. And that would have an impact on politicians who need to make change. We have the data, that is not a problem. We could have a user-friendly app with certified data to show us what the world is actually like. And everywhere I've gone, I've had such enthusiasm, and lots of people have said we must do this. I have made endless speeches. Everyone has said it should happen. I have the technological backup, I have the computer science people, but no one will fund it. It is as likely to happen as a camel being hit by lightning. But I keep trying, because we need this. Our children need this, our daughters, our sons, because the world is much more interesting than cursory research suggests. And we need to get shifting before it's too late. And like the map of the world, everybody accepts that that is how things are. We have the science to do this. We just need to make it happen. We need to see the world differently. My wonderful Danish grandfather had 2 glass eyes, which seems very strange, doesn't it? Sometimes you lose an eye and you have a glass eye. He had 2 glass eyes, but he could see perfectly well. Well, how is this possible? Well, he lost one eye to cancer, and he had 2 made. He had one normal blue one, and then he had one that was red and bloodshot, which he kept in a little box on the mantelpiece. And what he would do when he was going out for the evening is that he would go and he would open the box and he would take out the normal blue eye and he would put the red bloodshot one in, and he would say, "I'm going out now and I won't be back until my eyes match." He saw the world differently. And that is what I am encouraging all of you to do. And thank you for your long attention to a speech in English. Thank you for inviting me here. I am now going to go and be entirely happy as I laugh alone with salad.
Thank you very much for the wonderful speech. I see you're eager to take the shit.
Yeah.
But but you have to be patient for another couple of minutes.
Should I sit down?
Yes,
I could
if you
sit
want
down.
to.
Okay, yeah.
You're welcome to sit down, because I'm pleased to say that Heinz Oberhummer Tribute Band is with us today. I mentioned it already, and they have been exercising, and they will be able to play music in the spirit of Heinz Oberhummer. So please welcome on stage the Heinz Oberhummer Tribute Band.
Können wir das wegräumen? Stell es einfach irgendwo rüber. Guten Abend. So wie immer gekleidet stehen wir nun hier. Wir präsentieren jetzt eine kleine musikalische Nummer anlässlich Sandys Besuch hier. Und ja, sie hat schon sehr viel über sich erzählt. Sandy wurde in Kopenhagen in Dänemark geboren, ging nach England, hat das ganze Land im Sturm erobert. Wir haben ein bisschen drüber nachgedacht und sind uns dann draufgekommen, eigentlich ist das 1:1 die Geschichte der Wikinger. Daher sind wir so gekleidet. Und wie könnte man das jetzt besser musikalisch zelebrieren, diese Reise, als mit einem Song, ob Sie es wussten oder nicht, der von genau diesem Thema handelt, den Immigrant Song. Jetzt geht's.
From the land of the ice and snow, from the midnight sun and the hot spring glow.
hammer of the gods will drive our ships to new land, to fight the horde and sing and cry, Valhalla, I'm coming. Now we sweep with thrashing on, our only goal will be the western shore. So now you better stop and rebuild all your ruins, for trust and peace can win the day. Despite of your losing, always sweep with thrashing on, our only goal will be the western shore. Vielen Dank.
The Heinz Oberhomer Tribute Band, ladies and gentlemen, will meet them again in different dresses, I reckon. And now it's time to hand over the certificate and the beautiful trophy. Please, may I ask you on stage Sandy Toksvik, may I ask on stage Florian Freistetter from the Science Busters, and to hand over the certificate and the glass of alpaca poo for Federal Minister Eva Maria Holzleitner, and from the TU Wien Technological University of Vienna, Rektor Jens Schneider. Please welcome. Bitte.
So I should take the poo and hand it over, right?
If you like.
Do you want to keep it?
No, it's yours.
Oh, that's so kind. I don't know what I'm going to say at the airport, but okay.
So congratulations.
Thank
Thank you for everything you've done in the past, but hopefully also in the future. And the project also you presented is marvelous, I think. And because I'm also Minister for Women's Science and Research, I have quite an interest in that project.
Wonderful.
And I'm quite convinced that it should come alive. So congratulations. Take
Thank
this
you.
poo.
Thank you.
And all the best for the
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, sir. This is wonderful. There we go. Thank you very much. Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, and the alpaca as well. Okay. There we go.
Please stay.
Oh, more? Yeah. Sorry.
Could you please come for the photo?
Do you want to hold the alpaca? Okay.
That's easier.
Then okay. Well, let's make sure this is there like that.
Huh?
Is that it?
Everybody finished?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jens Schneider.
I would love to talk to you
Congratulations,
about it because
Sandy
it's good.
Toksvik.
It needs doing.
And now I hope you can't wait for song number 2 from Heinz Oberhummer's tribute band. I hope they changed their costumes. There they are. Enjoy the second song of the Heinz Oberhummer's tribute band.
Wieder. Lang nicht gesehen. Etwas andere Montur. So, als Motivation. In einem BBC-Interview wurde Sandy mal gefragt, wie ist das eigentlich so als homosexuelle Frau? Da wird einem ja sehr oft unterstellt, man muss ja zwangsläufig Männer hassen, oder? Sandy meinte da ganz entspannt, no, I love boys. I just don't want to share the body fluids. Und sie hat noch hinzugefügt, wenn sie jetzt alleine auf einer einsamen Insel wäre und die ganze Royal Navy würde kommen, dann würde sie begrüßen und zwar begeistert. Und zwar mit dem kommenden Song, in dem es alles andere als trocken allerdings zugeht. It's Raining Man. Rising, barometer's getting low. According to our sources, street's the place to go. 'Cause tonight for the first time, just about 10:30, for the first time in history, we gotta start raining men. It's raining men. Out and run and let myself get absolutely soaking wet. God bless Mother Nature. She's a single woman too. She took from the heaven and she did what she had to do. She taught every angel to rearrange the sky so that each and every woman can find a perfect guy. Mitmachen. Hey, 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 hey. Stormy weather moving about to begin. Feel the thunder, don't you lose your head. Rip off the roof and stay in bed.
The Heinz Oberhammer Tribute Band, thank you very much. Music Heinz would have loved, and especially the costumes as Heinz dressed up in yellow plastic suits when experimenting on stage. That's all for now. Thank you for joining at the National History Museum. Thanks for joining via live stream. Thank you very much, all our sponsors of the award. Thanks to René Berto, Fandi Reiberger, the technical teams that made the stream possible, for directing the stream, and everyone who helped to make the evening, the award ceremony possible. Congratulations again, Sandy Toksvig. Stay tuned. Right after the show, there's a science slam coming up in this room, hosted by Bernhard Weingartner. So I advise you, enjoy science every day throughout the year till the end of the universe. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you next year, 2027, at Heinz Oberhammer Award number 12. Good evening.